Hi guys, and welcome to my second video. So if you didn't follow the LinkedIn article that I posted with a link to this video and you've just found it on YouTube or wherever it is, this is about brute force attacks. So why do we still have brute force attacks? Well, people still make systems publicly accessible when they should not be, is the biggest answer to that. There aren't great password hygiene being practiced, so weak passwords, default credentials, and therefore they can be easily guessed, and people attack those systems. So just a caveat before we begin. Firstly, the first thing you should look at is, should the system be public? That's what I always ask myself. And if the answer is no, then don't make it public. Make it privately accessible, whether that's through a VPN connection, through SASE, whether you restrict it by a source IP or you restrict it by geolocation, which is a bit more of a wide restriction, but still something at least, or just make it completely private. That's the first prize. Don't make it public. If it really needs to be public, then try and restrict it by source IP, by geolocation, whatever the case is. Secondly, try and use passwordless authentication if that's possible, so key-based authentication if you can. If you really cannot and you have to use password authentication, use very strong passwords, and rotate those often, because the passwords, even if it's a strong password, it can be leaked, it can be posted publicly somewhere, can be shared with somebody. So those are caveats, but I have come across situations where systems have to be public and they have to have a login interface, all right? And you cannot geolock them because the people move around constantly, their IPs change constantly, you can't restrict it by source, and they can't manage their own keys, so the key based authentication doesn't work. So in that case, there is some stuff that you can do to protect yourself. Firstly, the password stuff I spoke about, but there are some free methods that you can use to protect from brute force attacks at least. And you can use the same method internally, so on your SSH or SFTP or FTP or HTTPS. It can be used for any of those, but for this specific video I'm going to be focusing on SSH. So what does my lab look like? So what I've got is, I've got an Ubuntu machine. So this is a WSL machine, Windows Subsystem for Linux. If you don't know Windows Subsystem for Linux, check it out. It's really cool. And you can install Ubuntu and Kali machines from your Windows Store. And I'll post a link in the comments below where you can go check it out and try it yourself. And what it is a fully fledged VM, a virtual machine running in your Windows, but I can run it from my terminal, as you can see. Right. Then I've got my Kali machine, my VM, which I'll attack from. Okay. So firstly, what I want to do is have a look at what my IP is. So there it is. So let's just see if it's reachable. .123. Yeah, it's reachable. Can I SSH to it? Already got that prepped. Let's see. Right, I probably mistyped my password. Let's try one more time. There we go. I'm in. I just can't type. So I'm in. So who am I? Right, and my host name. Okay, great. So that works. It's just to prove that I can SSH to the machine, and let's clear that as well. Now, how would I brute force this if I did not have the credentials? So there's a few different tools you can use. What I'm going to use today is a tool called Hydra with word lists. There's a few other tools you can use. Metasploit has got a built-in tool, but Hydra is a great tool to use. So another great tool is for word lists is a thing called sec lists. So I'll also post a link in the chat, and that is a bunch of word lists. It's great. So it's just a bunch of word lists that you can install, and there's passwords, fuzzing discovery, IOCs, usernames, etc., and these have been gathered over a long time. Some great stuff in there. Right, so what I want to do is I want to go to passwords, and I've actually already created, for demo purposes, a small username and password list. I'm going to look at that quickly and cut it out for you. There we go. Admin, admin1, admin123, and administrator. And if I cut out my username list, there we go, same thing. So just so that we've done thousands to go through for demonstration purposes, I've set those up already. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to use a tool called Hydra. So we have to have it installed. It comes with Kali Linux, and then what I want to do is I want to use L for my list, and what I can do is I can copy the working directory to there and use demo, and this will be the username list, right? And then the password list, same thing, but I'll use the demo password list. Oh, my typing is horrible today, so please excuse. Right, so there I've got my two word lists that I'm going to be using. And then what I want to do is I want to specify the protocol, but before I specify the protocol, I want to specify the IP address, which is 172.20.249.123. Right, I want to specify the protocol. I want to specify the thread, so I want to do 4 threads. So that's, I can increase that if I want to, depending on the resources I have on my machine. That's just to do it a bit quicker, so that it runs multiple threads. All right, so, and then what I want to do is I want to run it in verbose mode. And then what I can do is I can run that command, right, and there it goes. So it should, there we go. So it's running through those word lists. It's using all the usernames with all the password combinations. Of course, if you're using a huge word list, then you'd pipe this to text file, or you'd grep it to look at successes only. And there we go, successful login. And I've got the login. There's the username administrator and the password admin. To show that that works, I can do an SSH again. And let's use the username. And I can specify the password as well. Not able to resolve it. Let's just have a look. All right, let's type the password, and I'm in the machine. It doesn't have a home directory, that specific user administrator, but I can show you the host name. See that I'm in the folders, and I can navigate. And who am I? I'm administrator, right? So cool, it worked. I was successfully able to get the username and password from a brute force attack. So how do I protect against that? What is a cheap way to protect against that? So there's obviously lots of paid products, and depending on your infrastructure, but a very cheap way to do this, if I clear that, is using something called fail to ban, which I've used quite a lot in my career. And in this case, what we'll do is we'll install it. If you're not root, you'll need to use sudo. And this will depend on your distro, of course. If it's a Red Hat or a Debian-based distro, it'll be apt-get. If it's a Red Hat based one, it'll be yum, etc., etc. There we go. So it's busy installing file2ban. Cool. File2ban has been installed. So what I want to do then is I want to enable the service. There we go. It has been enabled. So how do I configure this? So the configuration is etc file2ban, and I'll see I've got a bunch of configurations there. So I've already got a config here called jail.local, so I can cat that, and there's the config. All right. If I want to edit that, I can use whatever edit text editor I prefer Nano, and there we go. So let's go from the top. It's an SSH config file. It's enabled. The port it uses is SSH. The filter it uses is SSHD. So what file2ban does is it looks at your log files and it'll look for that combination SSHD in the auth.log file, and it'll look for, it's got maximum retry 5 at the moment, we'll leave it at that, 5 retries within 300 seconds, and the ban time, it'll ban it for 3,600 seconds. You can increase that, of course, if you want to. Ignore IP 127.0.0.1, which is really just my local host, and that's just a placekeeper, but you can add additional IPs if you want to. Okay, so let's keep that as is. And with file2ban running, let's just make sure it's running. So I'll just look at the service status, file2ban service. It's not currently running, so let's just start the service. And let's have a look. Now it's running. Okay, cool. So we've got our file2ban running, and let's try that brute force attack once again. Go back to our Hydra, and it's attacking. So because we're running in verbose mode, you should see the attempts at any moment. Just give it a while. Connection refused. It could not connect. And if we look at SSH, let's try that again as well. So we've got the username and password that worked previously, and it'll just hang. Won't be able to connect. I'll give that a while, but we should get an error, our connection refused. Why is that? Well, I've connected from this IP quite a lot to this machine, and it's already been banned because it was looking at my logs and it found all the failed logins in there. So how do I look at my ban list? So I can go file2ban client, status today. There we go. And there I can see it's picked up total of 31 failed attempts in auth.log, looking at SSHD, and it's banned the source IP that tried to log in. So I'm banned. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to have to change my IP, use a different machine to attack it, but there's no way I can attack SSH from this machine. My IP's been banned. So an extremely useful tool and really simple to install. So what I want to do next is show you how do I detect this in a SIEM. So I'm going to use, for this example, I'm going to use Microsoft Sentinel, and I'm already feeding the logs from this machine to the SIEM. and I'll show you how I can parse those and how I can get alerts for those failed logins. So Microsoft Sentinel, what are we doing? I'm feeding logs via syslog. So first, if I go to my data connectors, which I set up beforehand, and I've got a syslog data connector there. Via the AMA agent, you can see it is receiving data. It's receiving logs from the Ubuntu VM that we were attacking earlier. And how can I look at those logs? So what I can do is, if I go to my to logs under overview, which is really your log analytics workspace, I can look at my syslog. Okay, look at my syslog for the last 30 minutes. There we go. There's a bunch of logs from that machine. So there's info and notice. I've got an agent. I've got PAM, Unix, sudo, session. I've got a cron job running. So there's a bunch of things here. So how do I filter that? How do I get to the failed logins? So what I can do is I can look at the process name, where the process name equals SSH D, and that will give me some more relevant logs. So these will all be SSH logins. There's the process name. And how do I see the failed logins? So syslog isn't parsed all that well. You get different log formats like Ceph, for example, that are a bit easier to work with. But here I can see I've got a syslog message, session closed for user administrator. That's when I logged out as administrator. Session opened for user administrator. And there I've got authentication failure. Right, so, and that's also for the user administrator. So what I want to do is, because that syslog message has a lot of different data and it's all kinds of different things, I want to look for something specific. So what I want to do is where syslog message has, you can do contains as well, but has is a more effective query, efficient query, I would say. So has authentication failure. Let's run that. And there we go. There I've got all my authentication failures. See failure log name. The user, there's no user there because the user does not exist on the machine. So that's great. So we can, through KQL, custom query language, we can effectively collect those logs and we can investigate them. So I can have a look at, I can save this query, I can build another query if I want to, and I can have a look at what exactly is happening here. I'll do a Sentinel series later where I'll deep dive into KQL, into SIEM, and into a bunch of different things related to the topic. But for the moment, just know that you can collect the logs and you can query them, right, and investigate that way. So how do I get alerts from this? So what I need to do is I need to do an analytics rule. So there's a few built-in ones, but I can use queries to create my own. However, there's already one authpriv failed logins attempted in authpriv that's been created as a template, and it is currently running. Let me show you what it looks like. So there we go, failed login attempts in authpriv, and the rule logic. There's the rule logic, and what I can do with that is I can view the query results, and it will show me there's 96 failed login attempts to that VM from that source. So it gives me the source as well. Okay, and I can set the threshold or edit anything on the query that I want to. At the moment it's set to 10. I can change the syslog message, etc., etc. I can change the query scheduling. I've made it 5 minutes so that I can show you the results. And then when I move through, I can enable an incident for this. Also, what's very important, I can map entities. So this will be the entities that it'll use it'll add to the incident, and I'll be able to investigate those specific entities, whether that is source IP or host name. Because really, when I'm investigating, I want to find out where the attack's coming from. What's the source, right? And let's create that. Okay, it's been saved. And let's go to incidents. And there we have it. I've got 10 alerts for failed auth-proof. A bunch of them, because it's running every 5 minutes, and I set it that way on purpose. And I can see here's the device that has been attacked and the local host address. Okay, if I want to go to the events, I can click on them and investigate. I can also click on investigate over there, and it'll give me a bit of a map, a graph. I can ungroup those, and it'll show me all the different filed logins. And of course, with these entities or the SIEM, I can actually go and dig down into each one and see other events related to this machine. But for the moment, just know that I can query everything and I can map it using Sentinel. Right, so that's about it. I hope this has been a useful video, and I hope it has assisted in showing you if you really have to protect a machine on the cheap, a Linux machine, you can do that via fail to ban. And so what I'll be doing next for the next video, part 2, is for Windows machines. I'll be attacking a Windows machine via RDP, and I'll be using some built-in tools to try and defend that machine. So join me then, and then we'll see how it goes.